If I gave you the task of trying to come up with a list of all the interesting things, you'd have a pretty long list, certainly one too long to be useful, and in the process of compiling it, I bet you'd have a hard time of coming up with a definitive list too. After all, are fire engines interesting? That probably depends on who you ask. If you're a 5-year-old boy, you might be hard-pressed to find another thing in the world more interesting than a fire engine. But then, there are 5-year-old boys who couldn't care less about fire engines. They're into ants, or Legos, or gasp, maybe even dolls. We might be able to agree that a fire engine is a lot more interesting with its lights on speeding across town to a fire, but that's not necessarily a given. I have a friend who's a birder, and there isn't a thing in the world that grabs her attention like the birds in the trees. We'll be walking along having a conversation, and suddenly I realize that I've been walking with myself and talking to myself for the last 30 seconds because some yellow-throated warbler fluttered its way into the begonia bushes we just passed by. To those poor folks in the arboretum, really, I assure you, I'm not crazy, and very sorry I frightened your little ones. As for the birds, though, Ro could take 'em or leave 'em. They don't grab me and pull me in, and they certainly don't captivate me the way they've captivated my friend since she was 5 years old. I say all this to say that it is a difficult task figuring out what's interesting, to whom, and why, and though I can't say I've nailed it down to a precise science, if there is such a thing, I have got a very good idea of what reliably grabs people. Later in this lesson, I'll present you with a list of plot elements so magnetic you'll find them spread throughout stories in every culture and era across all reaches of the globe. For now, I'm going to begin with a story. I attended a novelist's reading a few years back, a very talented writer I was friendly with. He read several sections from his novel, and all were wonderfully written. The crowd was filled with the smarmy literary types you would picture novelists hanging around with. Ro's friends, basically. And a crowd like that really listens. If you're in the club, they really give you their full attention. During the first 2 sections of this reading, the audience listened attentively and politely. You can probably picture it. A hipster or two stroking a mustache. A girl with black-rimmed glasses has her head cocked to one side, listening. And working to listen. And perhaps to my point, I don't recall what those 2 sections of the novel were about, specifically. I know they were well written and good, because I remember the novel as a whole, and I know the writer doesn't write bad work. He just doesn't. He's really good. But the 3rd section, friends. Oh my. The character was a boy of about 10, back in simpler times when men were men, and his father was putting his son through the paces by taking him to the boxing gym. This story was about this kid's first fight, and from the moment that bell rang in the story, the energy in the room was completely transformed. People went from listening politely to involuntarily transfixed, pupils dilated, heartbeats raced. The head cocked sideways, straightened up and leaned forward. People took deep breaths. It was captivating. Same writer, same novel, different chapter, different stuff. Some things grab, and they do so reliably enough that this friend of mine had tricked a room full of haughty academic and literary types into hanging onto the edges of their seats while a bunch of imaginary 3rd graders beat the crap out of each other. So sophisticated. I joke, but it's to a point. These weren't the type of people who order MMA on pay-per-view. If you asked them about it, maybe 5% would admit to ever watching a fight, but only as a guilty pleasure, you see. My friend, the author, could have done that in any room with that story, because some things just grab people at a very deep level and don't let go. Violence is one of those things. And maybe we don't know why, and we probably don't like it. But if we're in the room when it's going down, it is immediately and magnetically captivating. As a writer, it will pay both literally and figuratively to know what grabs. See Martin, George R.R., or perhaps our old friend Stephen. But it also pays for the top literary writers too. They just write about the same things in different ways. The most acclaimed novelists and stories of all time are filled with similar plot elements, danger and violence, sex and revenge. We just need to dig underneath the superficial situations being portrayed to understand why. I'll give an example of what I mean by this, and it may sound a bit weird at first. I read a lot, I know, shocker. One time I found myself reading an anthropology paper about a tribe of hunter-gatherers in South America, where the adolescent boys engage in a bizarre ritual. They live in an area of the rainforest that is home to a species of bullet ants that apparently possess the fiercest sting of any stinging insect in the world. And you might think these boys would stay way the hell away from these ants, and in their everyday life they probably do, but on occasion, the tribe weaves mittens out of palm fronds, fills them with bullet ants, and these boys stick their hands inside and allow the bullet ants to bite them over and over and over, and they take it stone-faced, never reacting to the excruciating pain. Not Ro's idea of a good time, I'll tell you that much. How about another bizarre ritual? Byron is from Long Island. He's been working a job as a bagger at a grocery store after school in order to pay for the limo and tuxedo he's renting to take Tracy Stanitz to the junior prom. See the connection? On the surface, these two behaviors seem totally different. In isolation, they bear no resemblance whatsoever. But what I didn't tell you about the adolescents in the Amazon is that the bullet ant ritual is a rite of passage that allows the boys to take part as an adult in their society. Their ability to tolerate pain demonstrates the kind of toughness a warrior tribe values, just as Western cultures might value hard work and an ability to hold down a steady job. The commonality here is that both young men are engaging in a rite of passage, regardless of how different its surface-level presentation is. Take similar events at face value, and they can seem as widely divergent as bow ties and bullet ants. Deep down, though, there's something meaningful going on. That's what I'm talking about by getting underneath the surface of the individual actions. It's about looking at the deeper meaning of the situation to figure out what's grabbing the deeply human and making it go. If you can get a bead on that and incorporate these deeper level plot elements into your fiction, you'll have everyone from the smarmiest intellectual types to the fun-loving surfers to the monster truck driving grandmas engrossed in your work. I won't dig too much further here because, as you can probably tell, I could go on and on like this for hours. I will say that if you're interested in the connection between biology and behavior and would like a place to start, Robert Sapolsky's entire Introduction to Biological Behaviorism class is on YouTube and quite accessible to a well-rounded layperson. Go get yourself a Stanford education with a genius professor in the comfort of your living room. Ro did. Without any more blathering, I give you Ro's magnetic plot elements. They are sex, death, danger, goals, power, wealth, conflict, violence, deceit, transgression, betrayal, revenge, mystery, dilemma, strangers, quest. I would be remiss if I didn't expound upon these magnetic plot elements at least a little. If I don't miss the mark, by virtue of the magnetic nature of those categories, I'll bet that at least I have your attention, if not concurrence. You're going to want these things in your stories in some form. Remember that we're trying to change the story world, and we're trying to do it in a way that will interest readers. Ideally in the same way my friend captured everyone's attention so magnetically at that book reading. Why do these things grab people, though? The short answer is that they are part of our deep evolutionary past, and if they weren't, we wouldn't be here. Humans, like all animals, have only so much attention to give their environment. Thus, when our ancestors walked across a landscape with countless things that could kill them, and wanted to, mind you, we stood a far better chance with a developed hierarchy of attention to help us figure out where we should be looking for the next threat to our life, or, on the other hand, the next opportunity to improve it. Our eyes are excellent at doing this for us when it comes to predators. Even my birder friend wouldn't be looking at the yellow-throated warblers if there were a bear or a snake nearby. Similarly, our environment includes other people and how they relate to one another. Our ancestors needed to know who had status and why, who was rising and who was falling, who they could trust and who was going to stab them in the back. These are all things that people had to be watchful for throughout our long history, from the savannah to the city square. I could easily write a book on each element and the reasons it grabs people, complete with a comparative analysis of the major pieces of literature that make use of each element as well as the biological and psychological foundations. If you think I don't have pieces of this already conceived in my head, you haven't been paying attention. Mercifully for you, though, we have a different objective today. These are your tools. Here's how you use them. So what I'll do instead is say a few words on each magnetic plot element, with a few thoughts to consider. Sex. E.L. James has sold over 150 million books. I don't mean the following to belittle her, because my hat's off. That's a stunning accomplishment. But if you think sex isn't deeply magnetic, then you're forced to admire James for her lyrical prose. It bears mentioning that romantic love, too, not just the erotic kind, falls into this category. If it draws the interest of the character or characters, both the hint of sex, whenever two single-ish characters notice each other, and the actual presence of sexual intercourse on the page are magnetic. All a reader needs is a mere sniff of sexual tension for this element to be present in the story world. Death. One of the reasons many researchers believe we're so captivated by stories is that they're relaying invaluable information about our environment, free of cost, so to speak. In other words, we enjoy watching characters die so we don't have to. The mere threat of death catches readers' attention. Likewise, stories that dramatize the aftermath of a death grab our interest as well. If there's one human universal, it is death. And the significance of the event makes us curious about how we can delay it as long as possible, and how we should behave when it befalls someone else. Danger doesn't only have to relate to physical harm. There were dangers with having children out of wedlock in Victorian England, or in being the social outcast at the ball for that matter. Danger can come in an almost infinite number of forms on the page, from rattlesnakes in the bushes, to a shady-looking character, to a stock market crash. Dangers abound. Cueing it can often be as simple as starting a story with something like, "There was a rattlesnake in the bushes." Goal. Goals, too, come in numerous forms. When I think of a goal as a magnetic element, though, I'm referring to something major: to escape the collapsing tunnel, to find a lost city, or to get into Harvard. If your character is invested in a goal in a major way, your reader will come along as well, rooting for them in the process, if the goal is worthy. Goals may be the deepest of all the magnetic elements, I suspect. Imagine the brain of a hunting mammal millions of years ago following the scent of its dinner all the way from the faintest hint of prey in the breeze, down a trail to a stomach full of meat and a brain full of dopamine. The roots of our narrative brain, perhaps? Power. Power concerns who's on top of the heap. Narratives that successfully engage power as a plot element consistently shift who's got it. People like to see the powerful fall and the small go big. In any case, there needs to be a thread of movement up or down the scale to grab interest. The unjust king pushes the people below him one too many times. Ahab orders his men to get after that whale. When a powerful antagonist wields power unjustly, it seems to set the story world out of balance until they get their comeuppance. On the other hand, it's magnetic to see a hard-working and worthy protagonist work their way to the top. A boy pulls a sword from a stone. Watching characters negotiate this critical part of human social interaction helps readers get a sense of the lay of the land in their own lives, and it keeps them reading to find out more. Wealth is not the point of a money story. It's how that wealth moves the characters up and down the social ladder. That's why it's the MacGuffin. The money itself has no inherent value beyond what it can do for the character's well-being and social standing. This category concerns life-changing wealth. Whenever big amounts of money are on the page, so are your reader's eyes. Conflict. We'll cover this in greater depth, along with dilemma, because conflict is a complex convergence of two or more characters' opposing psyches clashing in the real world. And we love watching that. But unlike most magnetic elements, a good conflict requires a little extra work to get it going. Sex, wealth, violence, and goals can be magnetic on the page without much setup at all. Dana and Chris were in the back room getting it on, rolling naked on the mountain of cash they'd stolen in a heist that morning. See what I mean? Violence. Any portrayal of violence, or even the threat of it, will catch a reader's attention in the same way a fight does in real life. Two drunk dads throwing punches at a baseball game, feuding divas tussling over a tiara at the prom, Napoleon Bonaparte marches his mortars towards Moscow. Violence grabs interest in any form. It's the potential consequence whenever things go bad, and the rules surrounding violence are important to know. Is it right for that third grader to throw a finishing blow at a weaker, already staggering opponent? Watch and find out. Deceit can cost a character dearly if there's something big at stake, even if it's just losing trust. Getting fooled can cost time, money, friendships, and alter life trajectories, and even the trajectories of nations irrevocably. When fiction is about navigating the social landscape, deceit is easily one of the most common pitfalls. Sometimes a narrator will bring the reader in on the deception, choosing to place the suspense in knowing that the oblivious character is heading for a fall. Other times the narrator might choose to surprise the reader along with the character. In either case, people pay close attention to who's playing the game of life fairly and who's not. We pay attention in stories as well. Transgression. Breaking social rules, especially in fiction, can cost a character dearly. Whether a transgression is clearly delineated by law or implicit in the culture, suspense is immediately generated when a character crosses a line. It is imperative for people to understand the social consequences of defying predominant culture. Interestingly, transgressive suspense seems transferable, by which I mean if you watch a narrative immersed in a culture where the transgression is not as severe a taboo, a modern American reading The Scarlet Letter, for example, the transgression still has the potential to hold interest. I suspect this is because we're more drawn to learning about the response of the culture than the particulars of the transgression. Betrayal. I draw a distinction between deceit and betrayal because it's an important one. If your enemy tricks you on the battlefield, it's expected. That's deceit. If your best friend steals your spouse, you've been betrayed. Betrayal is about a deep breach of trust plus deceit. The knife of a friend cuts twice as deep. Additionally, a character can deeply betray their own values and beliefs without ever deceiving themselves about what they're doing. Self-destruction can have a powerful hold. Revenge. Nothing gets the blood hot like the old revenge story. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And no motivation may be easier to explain. Causality at its finest here. Domino B is coming right back at you, eh? This too goes deep into our history. On an evolutionary timescale, cops are a new thing. What an innovation, too. Maybe not in books, but in real life, boy does 911 beat a blood feud. When a bad guy does something bad in a story, though, readers can't wait to see them get their just desserts. Mystery. Everyone loves a good mystery, but why? A mystery of its own, perhaps. My theory is that this has to do with a breaking of the status quo without explanation. Is this unexplained blip in the fabric of my environment a threat to my life, well-being, family status, etc.? When our known environment suddenly has a new and unexplained wrinkle in it, we'd be fools not to pay attention. Your readers sure will. And this isn't just about who did the murder in Scene 1, it's about the man in Scene 4 who lights his own house on fire with no motive. It may also be a much subtler situation readers can't explain, like a strange sound in the woods or even a magical circumstance or happening. Mysteries concern what we think we know about people and the environments they dwell in. Dilemma. Dilemmas, too, we'll cover in greater depth. This is about inner turmoil, how a character reckons with an inner struggle or an impossible choice. We like to watch characters engage in dilemmas, presumably because it's a free pass at a high-stakes game. We don't have to pay the consequences for losing. Stranger. This is the mystery in human form, here to disrupt a settled social circle and bring havoc to your town. Whether it's the new kid in school or a devilishly charismatic traveler in town to sell trombones, the stranger takes a known, settled social environment and turns it upside down. Whenever a new character appears on the horizon, readers take note. Quest. Gilgamesh, Jason, Odysseus, Rassilus, Dorothy, Frodo, Luke, Katniss. I could go on listing, but you catch my drift. This story is old and new, as eternal as the glory a protagonist gains by venturing out into the unknown territory and bringing back something of value. Perhaps most importantly, the prestige that comes with going where the timid dare not tread. A few words more about what it is exactly I'm talking about here, because you know how much Roe loves specificity. You could think of these elements as types of stories, the deepest layer of our evolutionary roots stretching far down into our animal brain. The magnetic plot elements I listed here are not plots per se. As I mentioned at the outset of this section, plot is a category that catches all stuff that goes on in the story. Shortly, we'll get into exactly what I mean when I say a plot. That will give you a helpful framework for thinking about when and where your plots are complete and working, or might have holes that need to be patched. What magnetic plot elements are, though, are categories of plot types. There's that confounding word again, categories, and admittedly the fuzziness of borders reappears. Believe me, a couple literary scholars could spend hours debating whether a cheating character is more of a deceiver or a betrayer, but it isn't clear how that would be a useful exercise for a writer. What do we get out of categorizing changes in the story world into magnetic plot elements? A few words on this as well. As we know, categorizing anything is an imperfect business, but there's a good reason our brains are built to categorize. It helps us to cut down on thinking time by grouping items with similar attributes. It can help us to pick out types of plot constraints that are common in a quest narrative versus a stranger story. That will help us to place appropriate obstacles in our character's way. Ultimately, these categories are a tool for us to use to help us hit our target, a story moving in our reader's brain that grabs the reader's interest. There's one final useful point here that also relates to the porousness of borders. If a wife cheats on her husband, or vice versa, how might we categorize that? Sex, betrayal, transgression, dilemma, and danger are all good places to start. Human actions aren't always neatly categorizable, and neither are stories. But as a tool, the fact that this action falls into 5 magnetic categories might help to explain why a story about a cheating spouse is inherently more tellable than your average couple getting it on under normal circumstances. If we consider that certain human actions are more suspense-laden than others, magnetic plot elements are a decent, if imperfect, tool for thinking about why. Again, I'm not talking about algebra here, but it helps to know what cognitive roots you're trying to tickle with your story. You could write the most beautiful narrative about a character who goes out birding and sees a yellow-throated warbler, and if there aren't any magnetic plot elements, only my friend and her fellow birders will care enough to read it. Make seeing this bird that character's lifelong goal, throw in a few dangerous obstacles, a dilemma, and a stranger who's a potential love interest, and you'll have everyone's hippocampus firing like crazy. You might even make Roe care about yellow-throated warblers, and I know at least one person that'll make very excited.